Yo, what is going on, Philadelphia Eagles fans? In today's episode, I want to break down the Philadelphia Eagles roster as we're heading into the draft. We're 2 days away from the NFL draft, and the Eagles can do a lot of different things. I think linebacker, cornerback, offensive line are the positions of need the most for this roster. I'm going to break it down for you real fast, and then after that, I'm going to go over the Eagles' first 3 picks. They have 1 in the first round, 2 in the second, picks 50 and 53. And I want to give you guys some names to look out for on draft day, the guys that I like the most in the first round, and players with second round grades that the Eagles could potentially land at picks 50 and 53. All right, let's break down the Eagles roster before we get into some potential draft picks. Real quick, before we get started, if you guys could do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so we can get in that YouTube algorithm. I'm going to also be doing a live stream of the draft on Thursdays, so make sure you tune into that. All right, if we're looking at the Eagles roster first, we're going to start with the quarterback position. With Jalen Hurts, Kenny Pickett, Will Grier, and Taron McKee all on the roster, there's no reason for the Eagles to go after any quarterbacks in this draft. We're not even going to think about the quarterback position. Then we move on to wide receiver. The Eagles have a ton of wide receivers on this roster. Obviously, we have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Eagles fans might not want to hear this, but if there's a wide receiver desperate team that's willing to give a first round pick, late first round obviously, or a second round pick for A.J. Brown, the Eagles have to seriously consider making that move. There's a lot of really good wide receivers that are going to fall to the second round that in most drafts would be day 1 picks. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think it happens, but if it did happen, I wouldn't be shocked. Then we got Devontae Parker in the 3, and Paris Campbell's there too, all competing for that third wide receiver spot. I like it. I don't know if the Eagles draft a wide receiver, like if something crazy happens, say they have a second round grade on a guy that falls to the 4th round, maybe they pulled the trigger then. All right, then we move on to the running back position. Saquon Barkley, Kenny Gainwell are the top 2 guys in that room. Only 4 guys on the roster. I expect the Eagles to add a running back at some point in this draft. Whether that's early in the 3rd round, I don't think any running backs go in the first 2 rounds. But a guy like Estime in the 3rd round is a serious potential pick for the Eagles. I like his game. He's big, he's strong, he's physical. I like that. And then another position that could be interesting, tight end. Dallas Goedert has regressed considerably over the last 2 years. They brought in C.J. Uzomah to potentially be that backup kind of guy. But Dallas Goedert has not looked good the last 2 years. They're paying him a lot of money, not getting a lot of production. I don't love a lot of tight ends in this draft, so I don't expect them to add a tight end. Maybe in the 6th round, maybe they add some undrafted guys, but I don't expect them to draft anyone at that position. All right, now let's move on to offensive line. Obviously, Jason Kelce retired. It looks like Tyler Steen is going to move in to that right guard spot. He was drafted in Alabama. Didn't play a lot last year. Cam Jurgens is going to move to center. And then we have Dickerson at left guard. Then we have Lane Johnson at right tackle. Mulata at left tackle. Good starting 5, but we could use some depth. A 2nd round pick, a 4th round, 5th round pick. There's a lot of depth in interior offensive line. A lot of tackle depth, too, in this draft. So if the Eagles added a tackle at some point, either the 1st round or one of those 2 second round picks, I would not be surprised at all. But there'll be some guys to be had in the 4th and 5th round. The Eagles have 3 5th round picks. So 5th round could be a spot for offensive line. I like the offensive line. We need a little bit of depth. It's not a major concern, but if the value is there, with Lane Johnson getting up there in years, if a guy like J.C. Latham, Olu Fashanu, Amarius Mims is available for them at pick 22, the Eagles have to seriously consider one of those guys. All right, let's move on to the defense. The Eagles have 387 players on the roster at the cornerback position, and none of them are any good. Bradbury is cooked. He ranked 100 out of 127 guys on PFF. Darius Slay was middle of the pack, 55 out of 127. They did bring back Avonte Maddox coming back from that injury to play the slot or compete for a slot position. I think if there is an opportunity to move up in that 12 to 17 range on draft day to get a guy like Quinyon Mitchell, that's a very realistic possibility for the Eagles. If not, they're just going to stand pat, pick at 22. I don't know if a guy like Kool-Aid McKinstry, I have a second round grade on him. I don't know if you stretch him at pick 22. I don't love a lot of I like the corners in this draft. I don't love them. I love Quinyon Mitchell. All the other guys, Nate Wiggins is really skinny. Cooper DeJean is a guy without a home. He's more of a safety hybrid type, in my opinion. I don't think he's an outside corner. The Alabama guys are running around 4 or 5. They're not super quick. I don't love this draft for cornerback. Then we move on to the safety position. Reed Blankenship and C.J. Gardner-Johnson are the guys. I definitely think some depth at this position is needed. Will they spend an early pick in like the second round on a guy like Javon Bullard from Georgia? Possibly. I think they're going to wait till the 5th round to get a safety, but I definitely think drafting a safety is a need. Blankenship's on a 1-year deal. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, guys, people like him, but he's not a great player. If you look at him over the last few seasons, I mean, his grades last year were trash. Defense grade 61, pass rush grade 50, coverage grade 64, run defense grade 65. And the past few years haven't been much better. 2022, he was a little bit better with the Eagles at 65, but the years before that, right around 60. That's what you're getting from C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's not an elite player. He's a slightly above average guy. They like his grittiness, but he's not the best safety. That's just the facts. And then we move on to linebacker position. The Eagles need to address the linebacker position. I think in the second round, a guy like Edgerrin Cooper is going to be there to be had. Go get Edgerrin Cooper, Howie Roseman. You got to get him. But if a guy like Laiatu Latu is available at pick 22, I'm grabbing him. He's a generational talent in my opinion. There are some injury concerns, but I like him that much. They obviously are doing their due diligence. They brought him in for a top 30 visit. They're going to review those medicals. So if they pick him, then those medicals obviously checked out. I love Laiatu Latu. They need linebackers. If you blew up the whole linebacker room, no one would even miss them. The linebackers are trash. Nakobe Dean was okay when he was on the field, but he wasn't on the field a lot. He's undersized. Maybe Vic Fangio can use him better than in a 4-3. We'll see what happens. And then interior defensive line in the 3-4 scheme. This isn't as big of a need. They have plenty of guys there. Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter was amazing last year. He's going to play a lot of snaps. Maybe you draft a guy in the 6th or 7th round if you can acquire a 7th round pick by trading. Maybe you draft a guy. I don't think they're going to go interior defensive line unless there's somebody that has fell considerably and they have huge grades on. Then we move to the edge. Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Bryce Huff, Zach Bond. This room needs a little help too. Brandon Graham was great last year, but he already said this is his last year. Then you're only down to Josh Sweat, Huff, and Bond. Josh Sweat underperformed last year considerably. He needs to step up. Bryce Huff has never been an every down guy. He was kind of a rotational guy with the Jets. Very productive in the time that he was on the field, but will he be able to translate that success to more snaps? We'll have to see. We will have to see. I think edge could be a possibility. If a guy like Latu Latu is there, you got to go grab him. All right, real quick, I want to go over the top 30 visits. If you look on the screen, some notable guys that I talked about before, Edgerrin Cooper, Zach Zinter, Roger Rosengarten, the O tackle. Cooper Beebe, I really, really like. Tyler Guyton, I do not have a first-round grade on him. He's very raw. In the second round, that's a different story, but if they draft him in the first round, I'm going to weep. They also brought in Laiatu Latu, which I love. Chop Robinson, got all the skill in the world, but the production's not there. I do not have a first-round grade on him. And I heard they also brought in Kool-Aid McKinstry and Cooper DeJean. I like those guys. I don't love them. But if the board falls crappy and you got to take Cooper DeJean, I think he'll be a great addition to this defense. Give it some flexibility, some versatility, and some grit. Kool-Aid's a little slow, so I don't love drafting him in the first round. So if you look at the breakdown of the top 30 guys, they brought in 6 defensive backs, 8 offensive linemen. To me, that's where they're going to concentrate their energy in the first 2 rounds. Defensive back, offensive line, maybe edge, and then in the second, 4th round, because we don't have a 3rd round pick, they're going to address the linebacker position. I love J.D. Bertrand from Notre Dame, maybe a possible 4th or 5th round pick. He's a middle linebacker type. All right, Eagles fans, in the first round, here are some names that I'm thinking the Eagles are going to be circling, depending on how the board falls. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, and Nate Wiggins at the cornerback position. Terrion Arnold's a little slow for me. Nate Wiggins is super fast, but he's also super skinny. He's like 170 pounds. Cooper DeJean doesn't really have a position in the NFL for me, so drafting him in the first round is a little risky. Then at the edge, there's 2 guys that I think could fall to the Eagles that I really like, that I have first round grades on. Jarrett Verse, Laiatu Latu from UCLA. If Laiatu Latu is there at 22, you got to pick him in my opinion. And then there's 4 offensive linemen that I think could possibly maybe fall to the Eagles at 22 if crazy stuff happens and all these quarterbacks start going. I have Troy Fontenot, Olu Fashanu from Penn State, J.C. Latham, and Amarius Mims from Georgia. J.C. Latham is a really good player. He's young, big, strong. If the Eagles drafted any of these 4 guys, I would be happy. All right, let's move on to the second round of the draft. The Eagles have 2 picks, pick 50 and pick 53. Here are some names to look out for in the second round for the Philadelphia Eagles. Safety Tyler Nubin. If he's there at 53, they have to seriously consider it. Edge guys, Idissa Isaac, Chop Robinson, both from Penn State. Good players, not great players. Could they turn into something good and blossom? Sure. I don't think they're first round guys. Second round, I don't see any linebackers going in the first round, but Peyton Wilson, Edgerrin Cooper, if either of those guys are available at pick 50, the Eagles got to jump on one of those guys. Offensive line, here are some guys that I like. I don't know if they'll be picked in the first round. They could be, but they could also fall into the second round. Roger Rosengardner from Washington, no sacks in his college career. Jordan Morgan from Arizona, very big, physical guy. I like him. Tyler Guyton has all the tools from Oklahoma. There was the Oklahoma connection with Lane Johnson. He's super raw. He could be a great player down the road. He's young too, so maybe that's a draft and stash type of guy. And then Blake Fisher, the tackle from Notre Dame. If he's on the board, you got to consider him too. Here are some cornerbacks with second-round grades for me. Rakesh Straw, TJ Tampa, and Kool-Aid McKinstry. I don't think they're first-round guys, but they're good, solid picks for round 2, in my opinion. The Eagles got those 3 picks. I like having more picks because if you miss on one, it's not that big of a deal. But if you trade one of your second-round picks to move up on a guy and they're a bust, you got egg on your face. The Eagles have moved up before and it hasn't worked out for them, and they've also missed considerably on guys in the first and second round, notably Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. The Eagles aren't great at drafting wide receivers at all, so to draft one in the second round doesn't make sense to me. I think if they add a wide receiver, it's in the 4th or 5th round. So I'm looking at offensive line, edge, and maybe cornerback. For me, the only real guy I want to get, Nate Wiggins is a possibility because he's young. He could add a little bit of weight as time goes on. If they love him, you can't teach that speed. Will he maintain that speed as he adds a little bit of weight? We'll have to see how that works out once he's in the NFL. So, those are the guys that I'm looking at in the first and second rounds for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me know in the comments below, did I miss anyone that you think the Eagles could potentially draft in the first and second round? I think we've got a good solid list here. If we walked away with 2 or 3 of these guys in those first 3 picks, I would be happy. Good players, strong players, a lot of young players too, so we can develop this talent at the NFL level. I like these picks. All right, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.